Nick's always showed a lot of interest in racquetball, obviously as a squash player, and racket sports is very much his thing, so he supported the idea of bringing us here to his club in Hallamshire. It's very good that he's standing here now, 3 years after his first stroke. You're now officially a racquetball player. Yes. So I can give you this. And on the back it says, "You're a racquetball player." Whether you're into wearing t-shirts with your sort of face on the front, I don't know, that might be a bit weird, but anyway, and your name. But anyway, that's all good. So thanks very much, Nick. A few just very quick thank yous to Hallamshire for hosting us, for Maureen and Karen for on the desk, who've been brilliant for 2 days. Thank you very much. So I'm sure you've all got lots of questions for Nick. I'll just sort of start things off. I taught you a general question is, Nick, your first impressions waking up the day after your first racquetball. How was the body? How did it compare to playing any World Championship finals? With different things aching in different places, and what was your sort of first impressions of the first day?
Yeah, I was stiff this morning actually, lower back. I think totally much more soreness. I had a sore head the morning after the World Championship final, but this morning I had a sore back. Some might say from carrying Dan all day, but you know, we used that one yesterday, didn't we? Sorry, he carried me. That's why he's injured today. I loved it though. I completely loved it. It was amazing. You know, just that little background. We were trying to bring it here for a long time, and one of my roles with the club is to try and use that sort of network of contacts to bring events to the club. And we created a new event called British Open Racquetball, for example, in October, and just getting the buzz down here again after so long. A lot's happened in the last 3 years, hasn't it? But getting the buzz down to clubs, you know, every club is the same. This one is no different, and we've got a really great area central hub there in the bar with, and I hope you've all enjoyed being here, and it's a really good environment when it's busy. So we're just trying to pack it out and getting people come here all for the first time and see our club. That's what it's all about really, and then share some mutual interests of chasing around small objects around courts and walls and everything. Everyone's got that in common, haven't they, here? So it's fantastic.
Yeah. And so more specifically, the matches and the kind of things that you took from yesterday, as far as the sorts of standards of the players, the things that you noticed that was kind of specific to racquetball, the transition from the sports, between the sports. Any particular thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think Neil Gowrie, who's the head squash pro down here, touched upon it. He just sort of said what was really amazed him was the technique changes. You know, I basically played squash at 4 sports yesterday. And you know, obviously watching the Griffiths brothers, for example, you know, they got 4 different techniques and they're able to just interchange from one to the other, and it's but at a really high level. So for example, I can topspin at tennis, but anything could happen. You know, and I find that if I played tennis purely, sometimes I've gone on holiday and just played a bit of tennis, and after a week or 2, and I've not played any squash in the meantime, I get into the tennis, the swing a little bit more. But then when I've just played squash and badminton, then all of a sudden I just find myself, well, it's just safer to slice, because at least I know roughly where it's going. So that was the biggest thing for me, is just seeing everyone just interchange sports. But not a tennis player wasn't trying to play tennis at squash, they were trying to play squash at squash, and so on. It was, and then at a high level. That was probably the biggest thing for me.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay, we'll open it up. So we'll open it up to any other questions. If you're all too embarrassed, I've got many more questions. Anne's got many more questions, but just stick your hand up, be number 1, be that special person. Luke's got a big smile on his face. I know he's got a question, but maybe he wants to wait till later. So anyway, just stick your hand up, or just say something. Anyone who wants to be number 1?
I'll go.
Go on, Susie.
Also, Nick, thank you for having us all here. But you were, I believe you were a county badminton player as a junior.
Perhaps a bit flattering, but...
You play competitive badminton and you play competitive tennis, so how come you chose squash?
So the question from Susie was that Nick has got a background from many years ago in badminton and tennis, and what made you go down the squash route again?
Yeah, it's obviously a long time ago now, so I won't say exactly how many years because then it'll give away my age, but badminton was at school. I think I played for Sheffield once or twice, but it was a long time ago. And then I probably did a little bit more tennis, played kind of county squads and things like that. I don't remember playing any badminton tournaments, but I did definitely play tennis tournaments. And the big thing for me was I made friends at squash and wanted to go back and back and back, whether that was here or around the country. I remember sort of being in a club like this, and when you weren't playing a match, everyone was on playing three-quarter court, and you met someone from Ipswich or Kent or wherever, and you just made friends and you wanted to see them the next weekend or the weekend after. In tennis, I found it, and other people might have the opposite experience, but just my experience was I found it quite lonely. It was kind of me and my dad sat in the car waiting for the next match, and just didn't really, might have been that it was outside sometimes, it wasn't as natural kind of clubhouse like you had it, I don't know, but that was my sort of recollection. And kind of, I guess, you graduate to where you want to keep going back to the thing that you enjoyed the most. And squash, I also think that squash suited my personality a little bit more, in that it was, I don't know, you're kind of in the trenches in there, you know. In tennis there was a lot of thinking time in between points, and you know, for me, I hated going to get the ball 20 metres away, and you know, like in squash, you know, I love playing tennis now, for example, but my favourite thing to do at tennis is have a coach. Just on holiday sometimes, I'll just do it just rather than going to the gym because that's boring. I'll just get the tennis coach to give me a lesson. He's got the shopping trolley and just feed you ball after ball after ball, because that feels more like what I'm used to at squash, where it's always happening, there's always action, and I think the combination of the two, it suited me personally, and just the experience I had making friends as a kid. There's a nice picture there actually, with the side parting, a lovely side parting.
Oh, I can see, yeah.
It's got the same hairstyle now.
An interesting thing, Nick said that about how squash, the community within squash was maybe a bit more welcoming. It's something that a lot of feedback I get from racquetball players, from people who are starting racquetball, and this is actually a big plus point for squash, is that they often tell me that they find going to squash clubs to start playing squash much more welcoming. Actually, is the most welcoming environment out of the four sports for them to get involved. And whether that's true in all countries, I don't know, but in a lot of countries, people's experiences are that when they go into a squash club, members are generally much more welcoming to invite them on court and things like that than maybe the other sports. So it kind of says what you said, and that's a big plus point for squash for sure. Okay, next question. Thanks, Susie. Morton.
As a decent squash player, Nick, what do you think is the easiest sport to step into in Racketlon, and what's the hardest sport to step into?
So Morton's asked as a reasonably decent squash player, what's his first impression? What do you think are the easiest sports to sort of step into from a squash background within Racketlon?
You know what, I mean, obviously Duncan and Dan have been my kind of two mentors, mentees, as it has been with Racketlon, and I thought it was going to be badminton was going to be easier, but I found the tennis easier yesterday. It wasn't easy, that's the wrong phrase, but easier. But I think if it was singles, I might have a different opinion, because tennis all of a sudden would feel harder. Maybe in doubles we were able to kind of throw me up at the net a bit and kind of keep me away from the business end of the court. And I don't know, I found badminton a lot tougher than what I knew. Table tennis was going to be awful, and it was. And badminton, I thought I was going to be a bit better, but then you know, I forgot that it also was 25 years ago since I last really played, and the guys were really good. So I thought it was going to be that, but it was tennis for me. But I think table tennis is the one that needs the most work. The spin is crazy. It's really tough. I think a lot of people say that, right? It's the first time table tennis is.
Yeah. A lot of people have played table tennis in the past in a sort of casual hobby.
That's what I mean. I thought I was all right in the casual hobby. You know, we do a barbecue and I always win against all my mates. You know, and then kind of averaged about 4 points a game, didn't we, or something at table tennis? So it was poor, really.
Yeah.
You could do with a better. I mean, we're good at squash as a pair, but we left ourselves a lot to do after the first two sports, really. I was advocating a rule change to Duncan, actually, saying that on the start of each day you should spin a coin as to the order of the sports, because I think that me and Dan got squash on first and put a bit of scoreboard pressure on, you know. Those Griffiths might be getting a bit edgy. If they were down, you know, they're front runners, those guys, you know, they like to be ahead early.
Good. Any other questions? Any other? Yeah.
So I know, Nick, yesterday that you were a little bit nervous stepping on court. When was the last time you stepped on court feeling nervous or not playing sport?
Good question.
When was the last time Nick stood on court feeling a little bit nervous in a competitive environment like this?
Good question, actually. I was super nervous yesterday, actually. Yeah, it's first table tennis. It's really nervous. So weird, isn't it? Because it's just been out of your comfort zone. In squash, you know, of course you're nervous if you're in a big match, but you've trained kind of all your life and it's your job, and you learn how to handle nerves, and you learn what your coping mechanisms are, and you learn that if you're nervous it's a good thing, because actually it shows that you're ready, your body's ready to do something special, and you know, you're not nervous when you rock up on a Wednesday morning to do Bosun Drive or whatever, are you? So, you know, there's something extra. I always think if you learn how to control the nerves, but yesterday I had no clue I was going to get the ball over the net, so the nerves kind of, then I missed about the first 5 shots in table tennis because I was a bit nervous, but I can't remember, honestly. It was definitely a weird feeling. I think actually the last time I was that nervous was on my wedding day. You know, about to do that sort of standing down the aisles. I can't remember being that nervous since I've been married nearly 10 years, so it's been a while. Maybe having things like having your daughter, having your first child. You obviously, it was pretty bad yesterday. I'm almost embarrassed to admit that now, so thanks for that, Dan. I thought these things, you know, stayed between us, you know, as partners.
Let your wife.
Yeah.
You probably got better yesterday throughout the day. Do you feel like, you know, enjoy seeing your skills improve? Will that motivate you to practice some of the other sports? Like see yourself get better? Maybe hard to see yourself, you squash get better, but maybe in the other sports?
You're right next to the camera, so I don't need to repeat that.
I'd love to say table tennis got better. It didn't. We tried every type of bat. Didn't help. We tried everything there. Swapped badminton rackets about 4 times. That didn't work either. I know. Yeah, I think you know. Obviously, the obvious thing to say is you've got to practice. Something you've got to practice the other sports, and I kind of got to the point where I was like, I haven't got that much time, so we could have maybe 1 game of badminton or 1 game of table tennis, and I figured actually that might not really make that much difference. I'm almost better off going in having no idea and just having a bit of beginner's luck, or sometimes you just play, sometimes worth not knowing. Ignorance is bliss a little bit, so I kind of went in with that, and in many ways I actually felt like I was getting worse as the day went on, because I started to think that you start to think about it, whereas at the beginning in the first tennis match just thought we had no chance, so just went for it a bit, and then all of a sudden in the last one I thought, oh actually we you start to think of tactics and strategies, and that was the worst thing you could do, was just get it over the net. So I think actually I'm flattered that you thought I was getting better, but I was actually getting worse.
Forgive me, I was a little bit late, so maybe being asked, but a 2-part question. First, do you think squash could ever get in the Olympics? And secondly, more importantly, do you think racquetball could ever get in?
Nick goes round. I know this, so I suppose Nick goes round the world, and he just loves that question, doesn't he? Loves the Olympics question. His favourite question.
Yeah, we did a 10-part tour with Daryl Selby in September, October time, and Daryl flat out refused to answer that question anymore. He was like, I've answered it 300 times and I actually don't know what I'm saying, I'm just making it up. So I'd love squash to be in the Olympics. I think probably Racketlon's got a chance to be in the Olympics before squash at this rate, even though it involves squash. That probably sums up squash in the Olympics right now, but no, I think it'd be amazing. Wouldn't it be amazing if all 4 racket sports were in the Olympics individually and then collectively? That would be the dream, that would be unbelievable. So there's no reason why not.
Craig?
Do you have any advice for old guys who are never super good at anything, but they're super keen, they love playing, they love to compete, they still want to win, even though their body's letting them down?
You win the world champs last year, don't feel sorry for it.
You sound like you've just described me. Yeah, I'm an old guy whose body's letting him down and who's not good at any of the sports, so what did you tell me, Dan? Let's go for it, I think. I know, you know a lot more than me. You know a lot more than me at this point, I'm sure. I wish I could help.
It's squash as well, right?
Squash, okay, I can maybe help one out of the 4, a quarter of the sports I can help you out, and I'm sure you probably do this all right if you're world champion already, but there's plenty of height up there in squash, right? I learned yesterday the hard way that if you use too much height all the time at badminton, you get absolutely crucified, but at squash it's always a good tactic. Keep your high balls high and your low balls low. Not too much in the middle. High in squash, I think, is a good one because people volley that one and put it away. So I would go high or low at squash. Well, you knew that already, right? Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Did you practice very much the other sports before this tournament? And if the weight comes back, will you practice more?
First part is a quick answer.
Did I practice? No. Will I practice in the future? Yes. No, in fact, I practice squash every day. I practiced squash for 4.5 hours yesterday before we played, so I was ready to do.
And connected with that then, so when you next time you feel positive about giving the singles a go as a new experience? Yeah? Okay, good.
I'm not saying that I'll probably be the bead drawer or something.
We can talk about that.
John?
Okay, so you're known for your mobility around the court, aren't you? Your fitness and mobility. So, well, you are, aren't you?
That's upon the time, possibly.
Yeah, so say if you've got 3 exercises to give people off court to get their squash better?
For mobility.
Concentrating on a mature person.
Okay.
So the question was 3 off-court exercises to improve mobility for the less young.
I mean, it's not so much one exercise, but I swear by yoga.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, and for me, I'd rather do 20 minutes twice a week rather than an hour once a week. That just sort of fits in with like the hectic lifestyle or whatever with kids, and so just try to chip away at that. That's one thing. For squash anyway, I always try to do anything involving the lunges because that's basically all that the sport is. So whether that's kind of side, back, rotations, like elbows to floor, kind of all sorts of kind of weird and wonderful lunge, even holding them to kind of get some stability and strength into it and core. And then the last one for me is I always got injured when I was stiff in the middle of my back, because then it kind of just affected everything. So I do a lot of kind of spine mobility and stuff, and whenever I get treatment I always try to get into sort of back and glute kind of midsection. So they're probably the ones for me, kind of upward dog kind of stuff.
And Morton, what's the best match of your career?
Racketlon yesterday morning, first match.
Lincoln version.
I'm presuming in squash now. Squash. The best I ever played, I think, was in it was a British Open final. It was in the O2 Arena in London. It was 2012. I beat Ramy Ashore 3-love, and I think it was the only time I ever beat him 3-love. Normally I had to go to war for a long time to beat Ramy because he was just the best player I ever played. So that was one. But I think there was World Championships in Manchester against Gaultier. I won 3-2, and that was probably the best match I'd played in, if that meant in terms of just the atmosphere and the big thing, and both players playing well, and it being so that yes, a kind of one of those two really was good. You tend not to remember the sort of first round on a cold, wet morning. You remember sometimes, you know. Yeah. I think someone said yesterday that was their first ever squash match that they went to see. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, you said you're talking about it was the first ever squash match, and I said don't go to another. No, it was Neil, wasn't it? Neil said don't go to another one because it's the atmosphere was really good at that one, so I enjoyed that one. England France is always a good battle, right, guys?
So a difficult question. I know that some of the girls have been just discussing playing mixed with you at a future tournament. So, what sort of characteristics would you look for in a
Well, apparently, I got told that we weren't an intelligent partnership yesterday. Someone told me, I think it might be. I only knew that people have told me that we weren't, because squash is our best sport, both of us, so apparently I need to play with...
I thought you two together.
I know, I mean, we dovetail amazing, but you know, in terms of both having the same strong sport. Yeah, so now you did say that.
I now agree with that.
Okay. So apparently I need someone who's... I would say someone who's really good at table tennis and badminton. So I was speaking to Sana before, and she was saying she might play, but then she's really good at squash, so maybe that would be a bad one. So yeah, someone who's good at table tennis and badminton and can carry me at those, I think.
Are you open to play mixed next year?
Yeah. Is it going to be next year?
Well, that's my decision. Don't ask me at the moment.
Oh!
Ask me once I've had a bit of rest. Ask me.
Duncan?
Simon, yeah.
Do you think there's such a thing as racquetlon squash as opposed to squash, where you kind of change your tactics because of the point-by-point scoring? Do you think you change your game style?
What do you mean by racquetlon
Well, people call things like racquetlon tennis, where people play safe, because you're guarding against losing points. You know, it's kind of a... I don't know if you kind of thought about that yesterday, or you just played your squash game.
Yeah, I basically, I know what you mean, because basically I had my partner saying to me, do not drop a point, and he was literally, I could feel it, he was going, every point counts, so I kind of didn't want to go too near the tin, you know, I kind of felt bad because I kind of played really boring squash, so you're right, I just smashed everything to the back and played safe.
Safety margins.
Really.
Yeah.
There is definitely,
Yeah.
Sam?
It's kind of a follow-up question to that question, really. How did you kind of approach the end of a racquetlon match mentally compared to how you'd approach the end of a squash match?
Because I was getting nervous again.
It's getting squeaky bum time.
You mentioned earlier you approached like the tennis matches with a different mindset. So the first one you've sort of nothing to lose, but the other ones maybe.
Well, yeah, I think the first one kind of just we were happy to get to tennis. And then all of a sudden we kind of doing all right, and I was a bit like, oh, I didn't expect this to happen, and started to overthink it and kind of, you know, where you're playing free. And you know, from a coaching point of view, there's a lot to learn from that. You know, if you can somehow channel that freedom, even when there's something on the line. So yeah, there's definitely something to be said there. But I mean, mainly I'm still too early into it for that to have been, you know, talking small margins. But for me, yesterday was just all just really genuinely fun experience just to do. And I couldn't, apart from probably table tennis, that Duncan said, where you always played it casually. There's always a table, isn't there? That you'll have a little knock, but the other sports I've played as a kid, so I found like I just felt like I was a big kid yesterday again, and it was great. So I mainly just loved it, and didn't really care, you know, that we were knocking up and the guys had to have 5 extra practice serves, and I'm like, come on guys, let's get on with it now. And then, you know, I wasn't at that. Maybe in a year's time I'll be in the same boat and I'll be taking, and I'll be, just wait, I need to just perfect this serve a bit. I wasn't quite at that point yet, but I'm sure I will be in the future, you know.
Okay, we've got maybe 2 more questions. We've got, yes, Anthony.
With your little experience in racquetball, what sport do you think is the most important for being performer in racquetball, for being the best? So I have a feeling about this, about the best role player, but for your little experience, did you think there is a sport you have to manage more than the other?
So do you mean of the 4 sports, which is the biggest advantage?
Yeah,
so coming from that background.
For being the best.
Yeah, to be the best racquetball player.
Yeah, I mean, they're all important, right? But equally points-wise. But for me, I would say getting on there, just you know, every match we were just down in the beginning, so there's always pressure on your then good sport coming third. So I would say like one of the first 2, you know, get a good start for me. That was my first impression. Even if, you know, table tennis is your worst one, you know, if you can at least get 10 or 12 or something and stay in the game. That was I'm a complete novice, so, you know, I might be wrong, but I would say, you know, a good start is kind of crucial. If you want to, you know, otherwise you're always playing from back, which is tough, right? You know, one day you're going to make some mistakes at squash and drop point. You can't always just rely on, you know, winning to 0 or something. 20, especially in singles, 21's a long way, you know, so I think you need to do a bit better than I did at table tennis for a start. That would be the one before next year. I'd be going away, right, trying to figure out at least how to get the serve back and the spin, and, you know, but maybe it's too difficult, so maybe, I don't know, maybe that's the wrong answer, I don't know.
But if you will look at the top players are very strong at squash, so...
If you're interested in my opinion, I think the best players come from tennis. Because of the technique. I think the tennis technique is more transferable, more useful in the other sports. And if you look at all the best players who've ever played, they've all come, if not tennis has been their first sport, it's definitely been their second sport. Because I think the tennis technique, you can become a good squash player from tennis, lots of volleys. Badminton, you can smash a lot. Table tennis, the very basic technique comes from tennis as well. So that's my personal opinion. From a technical point of view. Max?
Okay, I have one squash question. So who was your role model in squash in the past? And who's now your favorite squash player? I mean, obviously would be a British player, but your favorite squash player, squash-wise. Like, who do you admire for the way he plays or she plays squash?
Growing up, my role models were Jonah Barrington, and Rodney Martin was one of my favourite players, Peter Marshall, Peter Nicol. Now, you know, I guess, you know, I can't say anyone who I've worked with because that's biased, but I love watching Diego Elias play. I think he's just, you know, he's so smooth. On the girls' side, I really like watching some of the American players coming up. I think it's nice to see a new country doing well. Gina Kennedy is a good English player. I think I like watching. I actually, I think on the men's side who I like to watch. I'll come back to that one. I like watching, I think it's really exciting. I like watching Patrick Rooney play. I think he's a really good player. He's a nice player. Nick Wall. Is that what
And the best squash player ever?
I mean, Jahangir Khan, definitely. Best player I played was Ramir Shaw. He was pretty unreal. I think he'd be pretty good at racquetball. He kind of played squash with a kind of badminton style anyway, with his kind of thumb behind the racket a little bit. And he was, I reckon he'd be good at pretty much everything.
I've got one last one, and there's one last, and that'll be it. Just from your point of view, as a coach now for elite athletes, squash-wise, do you think there's a role for juniors when they come up the advantages of playing a lot of different sports up to a certain age, to give them a background, to give them a better chance making it elite-wise later on.
Yeah, 100%. You know, I know Federer's a big advocate of that, isn't he? At playing multi-sports, you know, the boys are not doing too bad. You know, I think it teaches you different sort of every sport's got a different mindset, different techniques, as you said, and, you know, kind of teaches you that, you know, you're not a big fish in a kind of small pond. I remember with squash, you know, I played a lot of racket sports, but I remember with squash we went into the English Institute of Sports set up when that sort of funding came up, and you were hanging out with athletics, boxers, you know, Winter Olympians, sailor, you know, every sport under the sun, and it was just so, you just learned from everyone, you know, whereas if you just spend all the time in your own sport, I don't know, I think you just get a little bit narrow-minded sometimes. So I think at some point you probably got specialised. I don't know when the answer to that is, but I think definitely growing up, you learn so much from all of them. I'm a big advocate of that, yeah. And Federer, he pretty much gets most things right, doesn't he? So I agree with him, really.
Yeah, mostly. Okay, last Dan.
So, 3 names. From the players that you know on the squash circuit, who would make the best racquetball players, based on what you know about their other sports?
Currently now?
Or anyone that you know, or...
Yeah, I mean, obvious one here, Greg Lobban, who lives in Sheffield, based down here. I played tennis with him in lockdown when, that was about the only thing he could play, wasn't it, at some stage, and he was really good. So I think he'd be good. Like Duncan, if being tennis being technique, anything to go by, I think he'd be really good. After that, I'm just trying to think. I think someone like Paul Cole would figure it out. He seems like he's pretty good at it. He plays scratch golf, and I think he'd be. LJ. Is LJ, yeah? Yeah, I mean, again, he's good. I'm trying to think of kind of current players. Who else? Sure, on the girls' side, I think someone like, I mean, Alison Waters had a good go, didn't she? I think she did quite well. You guys played, right? I saw a picture, and I think she had a good go first time round. She did really well.
SJ played for GB.
I was going to say I had SJ in my mind, and then I wondered what she would be like at tennis, but I think she really. There you go. So SJ did spring to mind, because I think she'd have good hands at like table tennis and badminton. So SJ sprung to mind, yeah.
Good. So the last one, Nick.
Why didn't you play the singles today?
Well, I wanted to do a soft start to my racquetball career, and you know, next year we'll maybe try to. I had a good partner show me the ropes yesterday, so we'll see. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and we'll see what next. But yeah, I can't know what to expect. So
good. Nice. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Nick. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for coming to Sheffield. I know that a lot of you travel from all over the place, and you know, this is a great racket sport club, and anyone who's not been before, hopefully you've had a great experience, and hopefully you'll come back and spread the word about our club, because you know, as I said at the start, these events are, you know, after the pandemic, are even more special than they were before. I think everyone appreciates them more than ever, right, Dunk? So you know, really spread the good word about our club, and hopefully we'll see you again.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.